Good. So I'm going to be reading the story for this week, but before we start with that, can
I
anyone
know
tell
what it's
me
called.
the story for this week?
Yes.
I'll ask you that later then, okay? Can someone tell me what the story from last week was about? I can show you a photo of it. Ellen read you the story last week. Can
The
anyone
House of
tell me?
Prayer.
It was called The House of Prayer, but what was it about?
Greedy people were selling stuff at the church, and Jesus kicked them out.
That's right. So the story from last week was in Jerusalem, and it was about how Jesus went into the church and the temple, but he saw that there were people selling stuff in there instead of using it what it's actually meant for. So then the story for this week is going to be called The Betrayal. So can everyone see the picture?
I saw the name.
Yes. I'm going to read the story now, okay? Jesus knew his enemies were waiting for an opportunity to arrest him, but in the end, it was one of his closest friends who betrayed him. Judas Iscariot was one of the disciples, was greedy and dishonest. His greed made him do a very bad thing. Judas went to the chief priests in secret and asked them how much they would give him if he helped them capture Jesus. The priests couldn't believe their ears. They knew Judas was one of Jesus' closest friends. They offered him 30 pieces of silver, and Judas accepted. From then on, Judas waited for the opportunity to hand Jesus over to them. So the story for this week is a little shorter, but now I'm going to ask you some questions. So start off with, what is the title of the story?
Betrayal.
That's right.
Betrayal.
That's right. The title of the story is called The Betrayal. And so Jesus knew that one of his enemies were going to turn it in, but who ended up selling him out? Who betrayed him?
One of the disciples.
That's right. One of the disciples betrayed him, but what was the disciple's name?
Judas.
The disciple that betrayed disciple that betrayed Jesus was named Judas. And what was Judas like? What did the story describe him as? That's right. The story describes Judas as greedy and dishonest. And what did this greed lead Jesus to do? Who did he go to?
He went to the chief priest.
Yes, Judas decided to betray Jesus, and he went to the Jewish priest and asked them how much they would give him if he helped them capture Jesus. And how much money did the priest give Judas for betraying him?
30 silver pieces.
That's right. Judas decided to betray Jesus for 30 silver pieces. And that is the story for today called Betrayal. I hope you remember for next week, because this story will lead up to what happens to Jesus in the end. Thank you all for listening, and for that, everyone can get a piece of candy for learning. Thank you.